And welcome back to week 10 of That Scale RC show. I'm your host, Adam Dean, alongside with.
Jeremy Kendall.
And what do we got going on this week?
Oh, lots of stuff actually. Many things. We've got some more releases are hitting the shelves. It looks like we've got a couple new chassis kits to talk about too, which we kind of touched on last week. You know, it's weird. I
Yeah.
haven't really seen a whole lot of new details revealed about that SSD chassis because I've been sort of paying attention to that on, you see ads popping up from RPP about it and stuff, and I haven't really seen
Well, it's funny.
anything.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think it's really only RPP that I actually see those style of posts from. I haven't really seen those from anybody else, which is kind of interesting. So I wonder if it's like a RPP exclusive thing first. Like, are they getting the sneak peek first, and then everybody else will get to see it? I have no idea.
Yeah, they may have like some special thing worked out to where they, get the sneak peek stuff, and they're the ones that are doing all the promoting. Since I don't know, they must just be one of the SSD's like preferred retailers or something, I guess. Be able to.
That's very possible. But yeah, I mean, honestly, from what I've seen, I think it looks pretty cool. I'm just interested to see if it comes with their transmission and forward motor mount setup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I'll just say yeah.
Well, I find it interesting only because, with me doing that venture into the one SEX10 platform that I'm doing with that forward motor mount, I'm kind of having to make everything myself. So if theirs is already like a kit to do that, and you're trying to do one of those style of builds, that might make it a lot easier for you to achieve that in a
Oh yeah,
platform that you already know that works.
yeah, for
So,
sure. No, I think that'll be pretty cool. I don't know. It's gonna be weird seeing where they price it because I don't know if they're gonna do like they do with the regular axles that they have. Their oh god, the Diamond Pro, and then they've got their kind of Dana looking one that they sell too. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting seeing that. The if they're gonna do the axles the same, because one thing I know for sure just from the pictures and stuff, they've got an offset pumpkin in the front like the Vanquish rig does. So
mhm.
that's like one of the very first things you notice about it. But I'm thinking that I don't know. They do the pumpkin plastic on the other ones, and I really like that because of it
Mhm.
sliding over stuff. And then supposedly with the axles, you get like what is it, like 75 grams of weight because they use like a cast alloy housing. So I don't know. I'm thinking that if they build them like they have their other ones too, that's going to be pretty solid. So I've had really good luck with SSD axle housings. I know you've tried them too, haven't you?
Yes, but I've only run the plastic.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, this is that. Actually, once we start doing some Wraith talk too, I can kind of explain what I got going on with that because I want to do I'm kind of wanting to do their Diamond Pro axles on this thing. I want to keep it kind of a lightweight build, but
Hmm.
I'm thinking like their axles and good set of aluminum wheels and maybe not even weight them. So I don't know, but it's going to be interesting seeing what they do decide to come out with for that thing. So, and what price point. It would be super sick if they were able to bring it in at under $500. I think that would be great.
Oh yeah. Well, because you got to think, I think that transmission and motor combo itself is a little over $100. Um,
Yeah, I
the
think so.
forward motor one, their axles are probably a couple hundred. I mean, so if you do the math right there, it's you know that in itself is close to $300. So it'll be interesting to see where the whole thing tallies into.
Yeah, because if they price it too much, they're gonna have trouble selling it because the immediate thing people are gonna do the second they see that offset pumpkin is compare it to the Vanquish rig, and then they're gonna start talking about cost and everything else versus what you're actually getting. So that's something that kind of I don't know. I'm glad I'm not them having to figure out a good retail price for that because that probably isn't too much fun.
Well, that's actually it's funny you bring that up. Um, that's actually a interesting point of view, you being in the business, myself being self-employed, um, when you have to come up with marketing your stuff and putting a set price, whether it be your labor and or product, that's a difficult task. That's not the easiest thing to do.
No, it's
Um,
really hard actually. You wouldn't think so, but it's tough, man.
well, it's tough because everything's like, is, as much as you want to say, oh, you're not competing with anybody, everything is a competitive. Everything in business is competitive because if you're the cheapest, yeah, you'll probably sell a lot of stuff, but you're going to wear yourself thin because your stuff is going to be selling so fast. Either A, you're not going to have the demand will be too much for what you can actually pump out, or B, you're gonna there's gonna be no margin for making anything because you're trying to keep the cost down. So now the cost that it takes for that actual product and for you to put it out there, your margin's not going to be worth your efforts of doing it all. Or that's when they start cutting corners, like whether it be material or whatever, and that will also be, another factors. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and you don't want to
So,
scare people away. That's always the hardest thing that I have with pricing stuff is you don't want to scare people to death with the price. It's like it. I don't know. It's just it's hard because then that does you no favors at all. Obviously, if you price it, even if it's let's say something that you're the only person, let's say that offers a product, like it's still tough because are people going to buy it? Can I make it for this price so that people will buy it? And do I consider, well, hopefully I'll make up for volume where I'm maybe dropping the price a little bit to try and move more units. I mean, it's a lot to think about, and that definitely has got to be a difficult part of the process here.
well, yeah, and then also like you kind of said, too, you don't want to be too high because then you're going to scare everybody away. But I think what some people need to sit back and think about when they're purchasing some of this stuff, or even if you're in the business of being an entrepreneur and trying to come up with a product to sell to the masses or a service to sell to the masses, um, sometimes you need to step back and go, would I pay if and you have to seriously ask yourself this as like a non-biased question, or give yourself a true honest to heart answer and say, would I buy that for that price if I was your average consumer and this company was selling product A, and it comes out for 50 bucks. You got to ask yourself, would you realistically pay that? If you tell yourself no, and you're giving yourself an honest answer and you're like, no, that sounds high, then go with your gut, and try to find a way to adjust it.
Yeah.
Well, if you say, yes, I would, and you're being honest, because I know there's some people that just want to sell a product, so they'll tell themselves, oh yeah, somebody will pay this, which isn't always true, but some 9 out of 10 times it actually does happen. Where
Mm-hmm.
somebody pays. Like look at the frenzy when the I don't know if you ever saw it with the new bright Jeep bodies.
Oh yeah. Good God, did they ask some serious money for some of those?
I mean, it's a model or a toy that you can go to Walmart or Kmart or Target, and you could have picked up the full working rig for 60 bucks, and people were stripping the bodies off these things and turning around and going online and asking like $200 for them.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
like,
There was a period there where it was tough to even find new bright stuff at Walmart because of that reason too.
exactly. So, well, it's because people knew that they could snatch those, turn around and sell them and make, decent money on it. And it got pretty ridiculous because people were paying that for them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like one of those things, where enough people are paying that much for them, you're never going to really find one any cheaper because everybody's just going to go, hey, if Joe Blow's getting 200 bucks for it, why am I trying to sell it for 80 bucks? I'm going to throw it up for 200, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And
sometimes, you know, one person choosing to pay the high price, you know, isn't always trying to find like the right word to say this. Like I don't want to sound like negative or I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. It's like just because one person will pay something doesn't mean you should always be asking that.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
doesn't set the market price necessarily because that's what one
exactly,
person's going to do. No,
exactly.
I totally understand that.
So
And I think that slacked off a bunch too, because it seems like now, you've got like Extra Speed and Deadlock and some other companies that sell that same basic hard body set. It doesn't have some of the stuff on it, but for the, it's actually nice because they don't come with the goofy like window net looking things in the bed area and stuff. But I don't know, I think that the price gouging over the new bike bodies kind of seems like it sort of went away after some of that stuff started being readily available.
well, it's not so much that. I think some of the price gouging went away when um, you were able to go online, like on eBay. Like I'll be honest, I went and bought some. I'm sure it was made in China. Four door JK body, and it was $80 shipped to my door, and it's more detailed than a new bright Jeep.
Yeah.
I think it's actually the same style. I mean, I could be wrong. Um, RC Girl could be using. I think she's using an extra speed Jeep body, but they're all kind of the same platform. All the doors open, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Pretty
got a full
detailed
interior.
interior too. Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, the one I got came with mirrors, full detailed interior, the doors open, all the lights, windshield wipers. I mean, it came with everything, the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, where else can you get something that detailed in a hard body for $80?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. No, and those
but
those do look really good.
oh yeah, I took mine a step further just because I have a thing for that. Some people call it the Stingray hood.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's because that's what James Knight categorized it as when he sold his. I just call it like the recon hood, or the that's just basically how the JKs are coming now. They're just coming
Mm-hmm.
with that style hood. So I actually took his Stingray hood for a 2017 Axial, and I cut out the center that I needed, and I grafted it into mine, so it gave it that look.
That would be pretty cool to do something like that. I don't know. I haven't tried one of his hoods yet. I need to do that. There's a lot of stuff. I gotta get a bunch of stuff from him before too long. Actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? Now that we're like just bringing that up, is I've noticed that he hasn't really been doing that product release for the buying of the files. Like, remember how he dropped the what did he drop first?
Oh, the Bronco interior.
No. He was offering things that you could buy the files and print them at home.
Oh, it was either the Canyon Cooler or the Bronco interior. I forget which. The Traxxas Bronco interior. Because I think that was one of his first like downloadable files that you can get.
Yeah, because there was that. I'm trying to think of what else there was.
Tent did the rooftop
I know the
tent.
rooftop tent came available because I know a couple people that printed those out. And then actually his Pelican cases are available.
Oh, yep.
What else?
I forgot about those.
Yeah, but it's just interesting how all that stuff kind of started, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. There was no more announcement of, hey, this is going to be available. And
Hmm.
I don't know if it was more too much for him to handle, meaning like it was too hard to keep track of who actually paid for the file.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know how that works actually. Because I know that some
so,
people were buying the file and like printing it for other people.
well, yeah. Well, I know that he had said that it was okay for certain people as long as they got the money for it. Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
like, so, like, if I wanted, you know, I'm just going to throw a name out there. Like, if I want Todd to print me something of his,
Mm-hmm.
I would actually have to give, even though Todd has the file because he purchased it for his one time use,
Mm-hmm.
I would have to still send the money to James, so he would still get his money as if I was downloading it, and then we just have
Oh,
You
gotcha.
know,
Right.
but like I said, that unless he's got some weird encrypted tracking on it, I don't know how you keep track of that. It's at that point, it's an honor system.
Yeah, that is kind of tricky. I don't know how they would do that.
So
And that's I really haven't had a lot of conversations with him like I used to, so I'm kind of out of the loop with some of the stuff that he's got going on right now.
yeah, maybe that'll be another good guest idea for the future.
Oh, definitely. He'd be great to talk to.
See if we can get him on here. Some of the stuff he's doing and talking about. I mean, and honestly, now I probably answered my own question. Thinking about that of the whole him not releasing anything, the biggest project he's been working on is he's had his hand in that what was that Toyota basically looking
Oh,
body
the
that came out?
metric.
Yes, and he had his hand in that, so that could also be part of it. He could have been busy with that and just
Oh
you
yeah,
know
I
before
bet.
releasing files to the public became big time back burner.
Yeah, no, that probably isn't too far off from the truth. I'm willing to bet.
So, but yeah, um, so do you have any new projects that you've been working on lately?
Well, Unimog hasn't really gotten anything else other than some side panels that I did, and I actually kind of took a page from James's book and did a downloadable um, template file to that you can just print off, in like 1-to-1 scale from your printer at home and make Lexan side panels for the Unimog that are kind of like rally truck race looking. So I did that, and then you and I both have 1.9 Wraiths, and I know we've been brainstorming about what all to do to those. So that's kind of in the front of my mind right now is a 1.9 Wraith, just because I don't know. I'm kind of really wanting to spend some time with this. The brief 10-minute period that I drove it, I love the thing. So
Oh yeah. I mean, you getting yours and sending me the pictures of it, that was the final push to just get me to go get it. I mean, it does help that I did a big or not a big, but I did a decently I guess paying side job after work on Friday, so that gave me some
oh
extra
rad.
cash. So I was like, all right, I got the extra cash. Jay just got his. I said I gotta get mine. So yeah, so I headed down to San Jose, picked mine up Saturday, and the first like I do with almost all my rigs. When I first get them, take them out of the box, kind of look over everything, kind of get familiar with what's going on, and just kind of like hold it, and flex it out on the table, just kind of look, check the clearances and all that stuff, and just kind of admire it. I mean, I don't know, call me a weirdo, but that's
Hold
kind of
it,
like
cuddle it, caress it.
pretty much, that's pretty much that.
Tell it it's
I mean,
special in its own way.
um, and then you sit there and you tell it, it puts the lotion on the skin.
Yep.
Um, no, but seriously, I mean, that's kind of like how I get through. Like, I don't know, that's just how I handle a lot of my new rigs. I just kind of, I always just check it out because it's I guess it's admiring the craftsmanship and like the engineering and stuff. Even though I know a lot of people said that it is, oh, it's just a reworked Wraith. Yes and no. If you actually take the time to look at it, there are some things that cross over, and then there's some things that are very different from the original Wraith. I myself personally own an original Wraith, um, and comparing that to the Wraith 1.9, other than the obvious fact that you have SCX10 with axles and 1.9 tires on it, um, the front end, the big distinctive, almost like, what's the word? I'm drawing a blank now. Stinger style front bumper is gone, and if you actually look at it, they integrated that front um, like radiator core support is basically where the end of the chassis stops instead of having that protruding um, stinger bumper like the OG Wraith has, and then they integrated that front grille to go attached to that. So that's kind of how the whole front end is held together, is basically through the grill. Um, I thought it was pretty cool. And then looking at the panhard mount, that's totally different. Getting the servos up in the chassis, that's entirely different. Because I remember looking at who was the first? Was it Vanquish? I think Vanquish was one of the first ones to have a chassis mounted servo option for the Wraith,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was actually a funky design because they actually made something that basically kept the servo in the same orientation as being on the axle, and it just went literally straight up. And I remember you had to like clamp it through the suspend like through the chassis tubing, and then I think it mounted somewhere to some fixed points that were on there, and you screwed it into place. But you actually had to work to get a chassis mounted servo in a Wraith, and now they re-engineered it, and boom, you have your electronics box right next to the Wraith. And I think that's another thing that looks pretty cool is you pop the hood to throw the battery in, and that motor mount just or the motor cover kind of blends in and goes over the servo area, so everything kind of just disappears, and it's almost like looking at a real truck. I mean, there were some, like I said, I have to say there were minor things that they've done that I think deserve a little more attention than they ever pointed out to.
Yeah, I think so too. There was a lot of stuff that this thing has that they kind of just sort of glossed right over, and I don't know. I mean, it's the thing that's funny is when people say like, "Oh, it's just a Wraith with a couple reworked things." It's like, okay, first of all, like anytime you're doing injection molding or anything like that, it is very expensive. So when you're doing injection molded plastic pieces, that's actually one of the most expensive parts of an RC car kit. And so the fact that it does actually have all of these different plastic parts and stuff, I mean, that was a pretty big financial undertaking for something like that, with like the grill and stuff like that. And then, the fact that you can actually put different SCX bumpers on the thing, I thought that was actually really cool too. That it has like a traditional post style bumper mount. So, I mean, you've got like all these options with this thing. And, and plus the body, I mean, trying to do a mold for a body is like not an easy task. So,
Yeah.
there was definitely a lot of money that went into developing this thing. So, I mean, it's not like they're just, oh, yeah, we'll be able to move some race that aren't selling. We'll just slap this on it and here we go, we're done. But no, I mean, there's actually a lot of effort put forth to be able to put this thing out, which I don't think that the average dude realizes.
Oh yeah, and actually the funny thing too is now that I actually have mine in my hands, I want to say the body is a good, like almost hybrid conversion of the deadbolt mixed with the spawn body. It's
Right?
very interesting. So, like at first, I always was like, oh, they just reused the deadbolt. They just kind of added a hinging hood, and that was it. And then after I stared at it a little bit longer, I'm like, no, that actually doesn't exactly look like that from the sides because the sides have a little bit different contour to them. So I'm like, and then it dawned on me where I have a spawn body, and I was like, oh, it's a spawn. It's like spawn slash deadbolt.
Kind of
So
is, yeah. That is kind of how it went because the deadbolt sort of has that like Bronco-ish look to it and whatnot, and then the spawn is kind of, I don't know.
well, it
The
definitely has the spawn take as far as like the definition, the side profile, and the rear. That's
mm-hmm.
dead. That's straight up spawn. The front still has that deadbolt, look to it.
That spawn was my first SCX body.
Really.
Yeah, that was my very first one. I dug it because it kind of looked like a bobbed and doved like Range Rover or something. It was kind of cool looking, but they kind of have it down like their whole retro meets modern thing that they do lately. Like they're
Hmm.
actually really good at blending that stuff in. Like I don't know. The first thing that I think of when I look at like the Black Wraith is like it's kind of hot rod looking. Like it
Yeah.
sort of has that like rat rod look to it, and what might look really cool would be doing the spawn body on one of these and see if you can incorporate the stock grill into it also. That would be bitchin' looking.
Yeah. No, it's definitely something that, if you think about it, a lot of their previous bodies should still work on it. I mean, if you can get your hands on like the Wraith Poison Spider cheap, body, should go on
Mm-hmm.
there no problem. Um, Basically, almost anything that fits the Wraith will work. They had a, I think so I think that leaves the Deadbolt,
Which
that
I've seen a
Stomp.
deadbolt on a wraith before too, which looked really cool.
Well, basically, all it is, if you actually read a lot of their bodies that they made in the past, they some of them will say, works with, and they'll list the cars on the actual tag,
Oh,
and some
cool.
people get confused because they're like, well, like for instance, the back when they had the G6 Jeep, the one with the no rear fenders and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and a lot of people, and it said fits Wraith, and some people are like, I don't see how it fits Wraith. There's no cutout for the cage. Well, you got to get a little creative. You have to basically hog out the entire half interior to get it to go around the Wraith cage. But once you do,
Yep.
it fits around it perfectly.
The deadbolt actually looks super sick on a wraith. Like that actually does look really cool. And then you got all the Proline ones too for them. You could have the Bronco with the open side doors. You could
Mhm.
do their Proline's Jeep Rubicon body for the wraith that has kind of half doors on it, which are cool looking. You could even do that scout looking body like what I did that 4500 class build with. You could even take that and cut the interior out of that and put one of those on this, which would be really cool looking too.
Oh yeah.
But the
Um,
problem there is you don't get to use the awesome grill that came with it.
True. I'd actually like to see, maybe if somebody from Proline's listening, I'd actually like to see them bring a Chevy version of some sort of body similar to their Bronco and the Ambush body, something that you could still use on an SCX-10 too, and you could actually use on the Wraith. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Dude, you know what would look dope on something like this would be a S10 Blazer body, the square one.
Yes.
Have like a pinched and dubbed S10 Blazer body for the Wraith. That would look bitchin'.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd even like to just see a K5 Blazer, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I'm not talking like 80s K5. I'm talking bring it back like you did with the Ford. Bring it back to the 70s. Back when they had character. You
Mm-hmm.
know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a big, bow tie fan, so I like almost all bow ties. Um, and there's nothing wrong with the 80s K5. That's very iconic in itself. But the 70s, early 70s body styling is like my all-time favorite Chevy body styling, hands down. So if they could bring that back, or if they can introduce something like that, I'd be all over it.
Yeah, I keep looking at this thing, thinking what else you could do on something like this. There's a lot of possibilities.
So do you have any other plans for yours, or are you just still playing around with it?
I don't know what to do. I kind of want to do the regular Wraith interior with the standalone molded plastic seats. I kind of want to do that just to have it be different, you know. And there's some really cool seatbelt harnesses and stuff that people are making for those seats that they use in these. So I was thinking that'd be cool. Um, Probably, I don't know. I don't know if I would want to do the drop bed on it or not. I'm kind of up in the air about that. I was kind of wanting to just drive it with plastic links and stuff and see how it worked. I did replace the front tie rod with one of the just steel kind of gold colored RTR ones that I had that was a takeoff of something. So I put that on just to kind of make it a little more rigid. But I left the drag link and the pan hard in the with just the stock plastic ones. But I'll probably do brass links. Um, Working on a flat skid for it, which would work really nice with those boat sides that are on this. You'd gain about a quarter inch of clearance. Um, I want to try and incorporate some sort of link risers into that too, so that you can actually have some adjustment with it. But I'll probably do like brass links on the thing, or a set of incision, the Vanquish incision steel links for it. Um, Tekin power plant. I already put a Protec servo in it. I did the 370 TBL, which is their big bad boy. Still got the stock ESC and motor, but that stuff's probably going to come out of it here shortly. So I don't know. That's probably really about it. I was going to do a set of bar headlights in it, but I kind of don't want to monkey with the grill at all, just because I really like how the regular grill is. I mean, I could probably get them to fit behind the factory lenses, if I hogged it out, but I don't know. I'm actually looking at the thing right now while we're talking, kind of looking at it while we're discussing all this, but I don't know. Like the front bumper, if I were to even replace that with anything, I think the only thing I would maybe use is like the Vanquish Ripper bumper.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you know what? I'm a liar. That won't work because it doesn't have the posts.
Oh.
I think the Vanquish one bolts right into the C-channel frame. So no, looks like I'll be leaving the CRC bumper, which I'm not against. I'm actually like perfectly fine using plastic bumpers on stuff just because they work really well. I mean,
well, the one thing I like about that bumper is how tucked it is into the body. I mean, that's the
mm-hmm.
same dining room table bumper that's on the 2017 CRC Jeep, and on that, and it's also on the Deadbolt. And on both those rigs, if you look at them in stock form, how close or how much farther out it sticks, you should see basically the approach angle is just like insane. If you look at the other ones, there's like no approach angle. You really have to hit an obstacle at an angle just to hop up on it. If you look at the Wraith 1.9, they tuck that thing so far back that you have really good approach angle. You're almost like, if you basically come up to anything that's about almost 3/4 of the way as high as your tire, you should be able to climb right up over it, like face first, like not even having to go at an angle. So
no, I think you're right, because I've got 4.75 Hyrax on mine right now, and they are maybe 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the bumper, like set back from it.
Yeah. So, yeah. As far as mine goes, I'm gonna pretty much leave it as stock as possible, probably for a while, just because I've always had good luck with everything the way it is. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my Deadbolt, I've done nothing to except metal bumpers, aluminum wheels, and I threw in an upgraded servo.
They really don't need a lot more than that. These new plastic links that are on them are actually pretty strong.
Oh yeah. So, and I think what other people forget too is, when you upgrade some of that stuff, like especially if you're just getting into this would be a good tip for anybody just getting into the hobby. There's always, when you upgrade one area, there's like what's the word? It's like a domino effect. If you don't continue going, yeah, you might have upgraded one area and improved that, but now you've made this area vulnerable.
Yeah, you've created a weak link people go overboard with some aluminum stuff too, like especially with bashing and racing and stuff like that. People go nuts with aluminum, and one of the problems with that is it just puts the stress on the next most flexible part, and then that's what's going to break. So you have to kind of really be selective on what you're going to swap out.
Yeah. Like, for instance, you switch over to all metal links, you're like, okay, well, now you've, strengthened up the suspension, but what is that attached to? Now you got, is the chassis flexing out, or because that's stiff, and it doesn't allow any, movement of anything, do you snap the plastic knuckles if you didn't upgrade to the other knuckles? And it's just a chain reaction.
Right.
So, when you're gonna upgrade, you need to, I think, continue upgrading or understand where the next weak point is, so not to completely, like don't get the front tire pinched and then try and turn when you have metal links. You're just gonna snap the plastic housing and be done with it.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's definitely good advice for something like that.
But it's funny, like what you said. I know it's a little side note, but that whole you go overboard, you make everything aluminum, thinking you're strengthening everything up. It's actually pretty funny. In the monster truck racing that I see, there's some guys that they go all out. they switch over to the flat rail aluminum channel or aluminum flat, chassis with aluminum links and aluminum everything. And I'm not kidding. They go up against like the SMT platform, which is like 95% plastic, and the SMT holds up because it has give, where the aluminum one just blows the smithereens.
Hmm.
Because it just can't hold up to you know the kind of stress that it's getting.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, but yeah, but back to the Wraith. I'm a big fan of the fastback mod. I've never been really a fan of that full Wraith, lid. It just, even with the original Wraith, I just wasn't my thing. So I want to do some sort of a fastback mod, but I don't want to do the one where you attach the links to it. That's just not the style. That's I've done that in the past. Michelle's son has his that way. Her dad's is set up that way. I just kind of want to do this one a little different. So I've been kind of scouring the internet, looking at old Wraith fastback mod pictures to kind of brainstorm an idea of what to do. Um, and that's really about it. I think I'm going to throw some other wheels on it just because getting any kind of aluminum there versus the plastic will give you a little more weight, and it'll just help, especially in stock form, to keep it a little more planted. Um,
Hmm.
and then just have fun with it. That's pretty much all I'm looking to do. Just go out and enjoy it.
Yeah, it's this replaced my class 1 rig. So I'll
Oh,
probably use this in class 3 once in a while. I'm not super serious about our series though. I mean, I've told you that before. Like, I don't really want to like win any events that I'm like hosting or anything like that, and I don't want to like trophy at the end of the year or anything necessarily. So I am kind of just toying around with the idea of just driving different rigs just because, because it's fun and because I can, and I think it'd be kind of a enjoyable thing to do, like sit class 2 out for a little bit and kind of do a couple things to the Wraith to make it a little more competitive and run that, and then, when I get tired of that, maybe build another class 1 rig. I don't know, just kind of just have some fun playing around with different things and just kind of, I don't know, take some time to enjoy it and not be locked into any one thing in particular.
well, you actually just um, nailed it right on the head with that one. Um, a lot of my rigs, like, I have my more scale rigs, which, you dial them out, you make them look more like something you'd see on the trail. And then I got a couple of rigs that are more like what I call, you still see them on the trail, but they kind of look like, the big time sponsored rigs. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you watch, any of those big companies going through Rubicon or um,
Right.
uh, Easter Jeep Safari, like out in Moab and stuff. And then I have rigs like this, which is a little more like, okay, it's definitely a different rig. It's not something you'd see on the trail every day. And yeah, so it's fun to just bounce around and have different, styles of build. So, you get a little, you know, diversity among whatever you're trying to achieve instead of everything always turning out the same way.
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
think so it's definitely fun, and um, yeah, so I'm definitely excited about it. And it was so funny. I came home with mine, and the next day, Michelle's dad was checking it out, and he liked it so much he had me take him to the hobby shop so he could get one. So
That's
we
awesome.
so now we have two identical. Well, they're identical for now, but two identical orange 1.9 rates. It's hilarious.
That's rad.
So um, yeah, and then what else? The other thing that just to point out that I think is kind of cool, and I know everybody's got their own preference, but my my radio of choice since I got into RC has been Spectrum. So when they switched over to the Spectrum style radio for the RTRs now,
Oh yeah.
I think it's pretty cool because it's a platform I'm familiar with.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, it might not be like my fancier DX5 or DX4S, um, where you have the menu and you can scroll and all that stuff. But the feel, the looks, you know, it resembles what I'm used to. So it's just kind of for me, it's just something something easy to use instead of like the tactic, which some people loved them, some people hated them. Um, it's just like I said, something that's just a little more familiar for me, so I just like it. It was big plus points for me.
It actually has a really nice feel to it for being a less expensive radio. Like it actually has like really nice soft trigger pull. The power rolls on really nice and gradually. Like I mean, the stock radio actually. I mean, as far as like the trigger feel and stuff like that, it feels pretty darn good. Because I was thinking about replacing it, but I was like, I mean, granted, now you don't have a 3 channel like you did with the Tactic. The Spectrum, I believe, is just a 2 channel, which
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that because really, unless you want the bumper to stick out a long ways, at the moment there's no winch options for this thing. So, a 3 channel radio isn't necessarily a big deal. It's not like a deal breaker if somebody's looking to buy one of these. So, no, I was actually pretty impressed with how it performed. I didn't even have a aftermarket BEC with the Protec 370 that's in it, which a lot of people, I mean, just about everybody, and I do it on certain things too, do an external BEC, but actually I had super good luck with this thing not browning out on me, so I thought that was kind of cool.
nice. You know what's funny is you just said that like, oh, people always ask, oh, do you have an external BEC because you're running the servo? And I was talking with um, Thomas Cook about some of the MKS servos, and he was asking me how I liked this one servo, and I said, oh, it's great. I just threw it in my my basically bone stock deadbolt. He's like, aren't you supposed to be running like, where's your BEC? And I'm like, I'm not running a BEC. I said, I'm just running a stock how it is. And he goes, and you have no issues? And I go, no, am I supposed to? Like, I just find it funny that like sometimes, you know, these rigs either a the stock electronics can handle the voltage change, so you don't really see anything, so nothing really light or browns out or anything. And I mean, it's just interesting that everybody's had a different experience with like different stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
think servos are definitely one of those areas that it's almost like getting a pair of shoes. you know some people want like more like tennis shoe style, something that like laces up, gives you more support around your ankles. Some people want flat stuff. I mean, you're really gonna have to go out and just figure out what works for you and what you like in a sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
if you're out doing like serious rock crawling, not trail stuff, but I mean like real like gnarly rock crawling, and you're getting into situations where things gonna bind up and stuff. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have it brown out, but like some of these dudes that I see in the Midwest and stuff, where they just kind of basically don't have a whole lot more than hiking trails with like the occasional rock or maybe some roots or something. I mean, chances are those guys probably don't need a BEC. It depends on what it is that you're doing with it and the type of terrain that you drive. Like the stuff that we have up here, like you can absolutely benefit from having an external BEC because there's some gnarly lines and the rock is super high grip. So, you need it because your tires don't really want to move. So, but I mean, it like I said, it depends on what your location is and what your plans are doing with it. I'm always of the philosophy that don't go out and buy something unless you're sure that you need it. I mean, there's just no sense in throwing money at something when there might not even be a need to.
yeah, and that's another question. I guess that gets asked frequently is like, oh, what servo should I run? And it's going to be kind of hard. I mean, realistically, the things I look for is really it starts with the torque. I want it to have enough torque that it's going to push the rig through whatever I'm steering it through. Nothing's worse than throwing a servo in there that doesn't have enough power and you're trying to go around some rock and the thing can barely turn because it feels resistance against the tire.
Right.
Um, and at the same time, you don't really want to throw too powerful of a servo in there because if you don't upgrade the other components, like we were talking about earlier, like you don't upgrade the servo horn or you don't upgrade your tie rods and stuff, you're either going to break or bend something um, in the tie rod area, or you're going to shatter um, your servo arm. So I always try to find something in at least the 300-ish round, anywhere from 300 to 400. I know it sounds like a lot, but that's kind of my go-to area for 1.9.
No, I
And
think that's
then
pretty accurate, really.
for 2.2, I try to find something close to um, between 450 and 500, just because you're pushing a lot more weight. I mean, there's
Hmm.
some people I couldn't believe, like on our MKS team, there's some guys talking about how they're like, oh, they were talking about monster trucks, for example, the other day. And the one guy's like, oh, what servo are you using in that? And they were like, oh, I'm using the DS1220. And I'm going, excuse me? Because, like, I know for most of the listeners, they're probably like, okay, you're speaking another language. What is that? That servo at, I think, about 7-ish, I want to say, um, uh, amps is just under 400. So I'm like, so yeah, that's a lot, but you should see the mass that you're pushing with a monster truck.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
like to see something way like I'm like, how do you like? I said I'm surprised that thing holds up, but some people do. Some people make some servos work, and and it's like sometimes it almost feels like luck of the draw. You're just like, you see somebody driving something with like massive tires. You're like, oh yeah, what are you using? Oh, I'm using this servo, and you come to find out it's only got like 150 ounces of torque, and you're like, are you serious?
Yep.
So yeah, so I definitely think sometimes it comes down to just luck of the draw, but servos are one of those tricky areas. So and it's funny. The other number one thing that kind of goes hand in hand with the servo is, and this is just a personal preference thing, is I don't understand the need for. I guess if you're somebody who's worried about it, maybe this is where it comes into play. But why some people are so, um, I guess, hard up on getting something that says waterproof. Um, most of these items they can handle the occasional water. I'm not talking submarine it, drive it underneath a river, and all this stuff, but a few, creek crossings, or it's raining out or whatever. 9 out of 10 times, that's not going to do anything to the servos because they're pretty much sealed up enough that it's more like a water resistant, almost like your average wristwatch.
Yeah.
It'll be water resistant to a certain depth, and then after that, that's when the water will find its way into everything and start causing problems.
Yeah.
And I've also noticed that some of these servos that say waterproof have a less torque, lower torque rating than a standard servo that wasn't labeled waterproof.
Interesting. That's really weird.
So yeah, well, because I know prime example is I think Traxxas offers a waterproof servo, and so does Savox. But if you get either one of those in their waterproof rated one, I want to say it's something low. It's like 200, 225 ounces. But
Oh, weird.
if you get that same exact family of servo in the regular, it gets it closer to 300. So you're just kind of like, why? Because it's waterproof, is it low?
That's weird. The most of the higher quality servos that I've seen that have an aluminum center case on them, most of those I know Savox does, and I've even seen some of the cheap like Amazon ones because I'm the only reason I buy those is because I make servo winches out of them because it's really easy. They actually have like O-rings in them that seal off the external plastic case and stuff, so that's something I've seen on quite a few. And I mean, if you do have a servo that's not waterproof, there's a couple things you can do with it. You can open it up, make sure that you do have an O-ring seal around that plate that the four screws go through. you can look there. If it doesn't, you can do either like a dielectric grease or even shugu just around the seams of the servo. And then what I've seen guys do for added protection is take a small O-ring and put it around the output shaft of the servo with a little bit of waterproof grease, and then put your servo horn on, and that'll help keep moisture out, from entering at that point too. So that's kind of another little trick you can do. But no,
Yeah, those are all basic tricks to kind of help your servo be more waterproof or water resistant. I mean, just speaking from experience, most of my servos aren't labeled waterproof, and I should find this video. It was pretty funny. I tried to, I guess, video bomb Helio at an event 2 years ago, and I had my rig, and he was trying to like, I think he was trying to like flex out or drive through like alongside like this water embankment, and I was driving my tow truck build, and I bombed it like horizontally, like across his frame, and all you could see was the boom sticking out of the water. It was hilarious, and that truck runs fine. No issues with the electronics, no issues with the servo, and I mean, and I really didn't do much. I mean, I spend more time waterproofing ESCs because those seem to be more temperamental than
yeah,
anything else.
yeah, ESCs and receivers. I mean, receivers are pretty easy. Actually, any of them are pretty easy now. Now that, like, I'm kind of lucky because now Tekin has all their element proof stuff. I don't really have to worry about it. And then the Protec servos I run are waterproof too. But really, like, the stuff I choose is usually around 400 ounces of torque. For a 2.2 rig, I will say this, after having a lot of experience with the Bomber, I think in situations where you have a servo on axle with like the AR60s and stuff, I very much recommend getting a full aluminum cased servo. I had some save boxes when I first got my Bomber and was racing U4 with it. And dude, I would bust the tabs off of the servo cases left and right. Like, it was crazy. And so at the time, I was lucky enough to find one of those Vanquish servo armors. And so I put that on, and that stiffened up the mounting points, for the servo and everything, and made it all solid. And then went to a all aluminum cased servo, and that ended up being the cure for it. But man, I was breaking servo cases left and right because those 2.2 tires, that is an enormous amount of resistance for that servo to try and push, especially when those things are hooking up. So that's kind of something to consider. You're going to spend more money, but look at how many servos you're going to break or how many cases you're going to need to replace at $15 or whatever it is. That it kind of, and plus, really, I mean, there's a lot of servos out there like the Aaaand WP120T. It's part of their EcoPower line. That's a 400 ounce plus at 6.2 or something like that, I want to say. And it's waterproof also, and has an aluminum center section, for like heat dissipation stuff. But that thing retails at like $70. So I mean, really, there's a lot of choices out there now that are not super expensive, that are going to have the torque that you need, that aren't going to be super power hungry like they were back in the day. There's a lot smarter servos out there now. So it's something to consider at least. So I don't know. It's just kind of like what I do with my stuff. That's sort of like my take. But I really just wanted to add the part about the 2.2 ones breaking the tabs, because that was something that I ran into all the time.
Well, you also got to think on something like the Bomber or the original Wraith that had the servo on axle. When it's down on axle, yeah, it's not taking as much stress as far as like the steering aspect, but where it's taking the stress is the beating, that it's closer to the elements. That's what really stresses it out. Yeah, you're still going to get the same gear stress on the axle as in the chassis. The other thing is the chassis will actually give it a little more stress because it's at a different location, and the way it's mounted, it has the teeter effect. Whereas when it's usually flat on the axle, it's a little more rigid, so it doesn't have as much, flex, but it still happens. So, But yeah, um, maybe we'll put a link up on our page about the different servos we run, so that way
Yeah, good idea.
if anybody wants to check it out, I know you run a lot of the ProTech servos, and I run a lot of MKS, which I know probably a good amount of our listener base will not know, or either A, not know, or B, not know and have never heard of MKS. But it's definitely a brand I stand behind for more reasons than one. And I don't know, they make some good products, so we'll definitely
Oh,
have to put a link
very
out there
good
so
stuff.
check out. That's right, I forget. Travis runs MKS.
Yeah, he's an MCAS driver. Actually, I have one of his servos in one of our courier replica Jeeps. I have a 599 in that, and that thing's beastly.
I love that servo.
I'm actually
I,
really proud of myself for remembering all these numbers and names for these different servos just off the top of my head, because usually I'm not so good at that stuff.
yeah, that is the problem with like all these different brands because like they all label them different things and they all have and all those numbers correlate to a different reasoning for why or different classifications of what kind of servo it is. So
There was one
um,
I was really impressed with that is just pretty much unknown in areas outside of like flight, just like how MKS was up until the last couple of years. They were mostly just like a helicopter and airplane servo companies where people knew them, and so everyone thought they were like new to the scene when they started doing surface stuff, but really weren't. But there's another brand that's very similar to MKS, and it was OMG, and it was like Outstanding Model Group or something like that is like the actual like real name of the company. It's kind of a goofy name, but there was a
yeah,
hobby
I was just
shop over in Spokane that sells those, and I had gotten one trading out for some decal work and stuff. He's like, "Hey, I got one of these. You want to try it and see what you think?" And so I tried it out, and it was actually a really nice servo. So it's there's a lot of different brands out there popping up that people may not be familiar with, but they're actually really good. So I mean,
oh yeah.
the biggest thing, of course, is just product support too. When you're picking a servo, that's because most people will rebuild it if it's split. If you strip out the gears in it or have any other kind of issues and stuff. So it is nice, getting something that you can get replacement parts for. So that's kind of good.
Well, well, the cool thing is, I know a lot of these bigger companies, they sell replacement gear sets for their popular servos,
Mm-hmm.
like, or I guess you could say they're more expensive servos. So, don't buy the cheapest one that's got, like 150 ounce, torque rating, and then expect them to have, a gear set for it because if you keep breaking it,
Yeah.
you're just there's you're probably just gonna end up trying to replace it every time or fix the gears every time instead of maybe getting a servo that's designed to handle that. Um,
Right.
so, so I
It's
know
kind of one of those areas you don't want to chintz on.
pretty much it's well, it's almost like that with like even like your real car. You kind of don't want to chintz on your steering wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
Get you kind of want to get something that can handle what you're doing, up to the
Yeah.
task. So,
And
um,
it is tough being in that position too, when you're a sponsored driver and you're trying to recommend certain things to people because everybody's got like a different budget, and so I mean,
true.
some people have affordable servos, and their idea of affordable is $100, and that's like some dudes like way high end like save up for two paychecks to get one. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to kind of I don't know. It's tough trying to be a responsible source of knowledge when people come to you for questions like that because you've got your responsibility to your brand that you represent, but also you have a responsibility to the guy that's putting his trust and his hard-earned money into the 2 cents worth that you're offering him. So it's kind
Well,
of tough.
that's why I would say, to put my shameless plug in right now would be if if I had to give a recommendation, I would recommend the MKS DS1220 because the retail price, strength and durability, and the overall performance. Um, it comes in retail. I want to say it's like $80 retail, um, which isn't bad for a servo that gets you about 400 ounces of torque. The rear half is aluminum. The front is still plastic, so you still have the plastic gears, and you have metal gears. So those are three big factors, and that's kind of the reason why I recommend it all the time. Um, and by now, it's no secret, I am an MKS team driver, so that's why I recommend that. Um, but my relationship, not to totally get off topic or go on a whole side conversation, with with MKS kind of is different because it wasn't one of those companies that reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to be a team driver?" And I knew nothing about their products, and then all of a sudden had to educate myself. I actually stumbled into MKS prior to getting a team driver option or whatever. Um, and that's why I kind of feel the way I feel about them versus just like, like there's some people that have loyalty to their brands just because that's, they have their own reasons, whether it be they just like that brand more, um, they value the product or whatever. I'm kind of like, hey, I actually got to try one of these when I wasn't, being asked to, and just the overall performance blew me away. And that's what kind of drew me into it more. So the first one I ever owned was the one you mentioned, the HBL 559.
Yeah, that thing's rad.
Well, what was funny was I was running a high tech. I'm drawing a blank on what their big bad one was. 1350 or
I,
1250.
I'm just gonna nod my head because I think I've owned one high tech servo in 10 years, so I know nothing.
I'm drawing a blank. It's whatever the big bad one was. I forget what it was. It was the one that almost if you were into high tech servos, that was the servo to get because it had the most torque, full aluminum, everything. Um, and I feel bad that I can't remember what it is. But anyways, that's not important. What I'm getting at is I had my radio set. All the endpoints were set to a certain way, so I can get the maximum steering out of my rig. And it was funny when I fried that one, I was like, okay, I need to get a new servo. Well, at the time, Jason CKRC was like, hey, we just started carrying MKS. I want you to try this one out. So I was like, okay, and I'll be honest, I was nervous at the time because I was like, I've never heard of MKS. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. It's not, I'm not familiar with the product. So like, I was like, okay, this is either going to be a make or break. And when I threw that servo into my Wraith, I didn't reset the settings back to zero, which is a big rookie mistake. You should always reset everything back to factory specs so that way when you plug something in, it doesn't do something it's not supposed to do.
Yeah, I always
And
turn it on when I put the horn on just to kind of keep from, like I'll power it up before I put the
well,
servo horn on.
well, yeah, well, I did that, but what I didn't do was change all my steering stuff. So it was crazy when I first tested to make sure that the steering worked. When I had it fully cranked one way, the tires turned so much farther than my high tech did. They pushed the tires into the links. Like I was like, whoa! I actually have to turn. I actually have to turn this thing down. That's what blew. That's what blew me away because I was so used to it with my. I was a big high tech person before, and and I had to always turn everything up. Like I had to turn steering up to like 100, 12%. And with this one, I actually had to turn it down to like 75% just to get it to not stuff the tires into the links. Like that was
That's
what
rad.
was that was what was really crazy. Which, if you think about it, if you're not asking it to go the full distance, then you're not putting extra stress on it. So, in you know, overall, long term effect, it's actually saving. You're not stressing it out, so the product's going to last longer. So that's like I said. So to me, that's what really sold me on it. And then later on, Tim Smith got a hold of us, so that was a whole different story. But But yeah, so no, I thought that. So that's one thing that I think is kind of cool. So if there's one thing to take out of that story, it's the fact that yes, I know I'm a team driver, but I did have real life experience with it prior to becoming a team driver. So I kind of want to say that I have a better, more real world response when I'm trying to help you pick a servo. But
Right.
obviously, like you said, we got our sponsorship you know obligations to obtain, so or uphold.
Right.
So, which could be a whole nother topic. I mean, that building rigs. When you're a sponsored driver, there's so many areas you can get handicapped or or tied down with certain things that for some people that it might be too much for them, you know. And I'm fortunate enough that the people that want to back me are all products that I'm happy with using. I don't have any kind of an issue. Um, the one thing I'm kind of happy I don't have is a tire sponsor because there's so many different tires out there now, and there's some definite heavy hitters like Proline's got a really big name in the tire industry, and there's a lot of Proline tires I like, but I also enjoy running the Pitbull tires. So it's like I like having that freedom of being able to run pretty much whatever I want. So if this build, I feel, oh hey, I want to run a super swamp. Okay, hit up, go to Proline, order the super swampers, and throw them on a rig. Now, if on this rig I'm like, ooh, I think the rock beast would look way better, then I can be like, hey, go order up some pit bulls and throw them on. I know there's some people that like, they because they're sponsored by certain, like they have a tire sponsor, they can only run certain tires. And you know, maybe yeah, the tires work good, but I'm one of those, and it could just be a weird, I don't know, quirk or something like that. I just, like I like to try a different tire on every build. Like I don't like to have repeats. I mean, obviously you're going to go back to what works and you're going to throw it on there, but sometimes I
Yeah.
try to mix it up so that way you can say, okay, I'm going out to these rocks. Oh, I remember this rig worked really well because it had, these tires. Or you could be like, oh, I'm going out to a sandier location. Oh, go with these tires because these work better. That's why I kind of like to have something different, so I can always kind of
Right.
say, have a almost like have a rig for every area. You always want to ultimately try to have an all around, but sometimes some tires just outshine others in different elements, and there's just no way around it.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That's totally the case. I mean, it happens to be like where we are that one of the best tires you can run are the swampers, just especially in the wintertime, and it's just because of the terrain that we have and everything else. You get some mud mixed in with all the crazy hard high traction rock faces and stuff, and throw in rain and everything else, and it just happens to be what works the best for us here. So it's that's why it's always so funny when you see people post online like, all right guys, who makes the best tires? It's like I think a lot of people like that. It's like, if you have any common sense, you're gonna look at that and be like, dude, that's an impossible question to answer honestly. And plus, even if someone does answer it honestly, it's not necessarily gonna apply to everybody because, like I said, everybody has a different geographic location and different terrain. So I mean, the posts like that are just really silly and don't really help anybody. I feel like some people probably do stuff like that just to see people like argue and stuff. So
I think that's some of it, and I think honestly, what some of it is too, is it could also be somebody who's just getting into the hobby and they might not know, so they ask, and they're probably going to try and see, okay, I asked this question and 15 people said this tire, and then 3 people said this tire, and 6 people said this tire. Well, that'll kind of give you an idea of, okay, what should I go with?
right,
If
that's
enough
true.
people
Yeah.
if enough people are recommending this one tire, they're probably going to go that way.
Right.
Which, there's nothing wrong with looking for advice, in the
Sure.
community. Um, but sometimes you almost need to find, like I said, it goes back to the whole servo thing. They're almost like shoes. It's it's going to be what you know you like or what you enjoy,
Right.
and there's so many different variables that can change all that. I mean, between like you said, terrain, driving habits. I see some people. There's no steady crawling. It's like
Oh
hammered.
yeah, throttle
It's like
jockeys.
it's hammered down. Well, yeah, a different tire is going to work differently for that because some tires they're stickier, so they're gonna work better when you're going slow, so they can actually grab and pull
Mm-hmm.
you up over the obstacle. If you're hauling ass, they you might be missing a couple things because now you're using the momentum of the rig flying forward, to get you up over obstacles.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Dude could drive with just mad wheel speed everywhere, and that's what he, like you don't really know.
yeah, so um, yeah, so it's one of those things. I'm definitely going to say that in this episode. To just if you're a person that's always been interested in like trying to, find out what works best for you, like just don't be afraid to try different products. You know,
Yeah.
if you have the opportunity to try different ones, maybe on your next build, instead of going your go-to like tried and true, setup, maybe try something a little different. That way you can kind of expand and kind of see what's out there. um, it's definitely something that will help you not only be more familiar with different products, but you'll get a chance to see what else is out there because you could say this brand is your favorite brand in the entire world, and you might try brand B, and that might be easier for you to program, might be more cost efficient, might work better for your situation, and that might become your new favorite one. So you never
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know till you try, and if you do have an open mind and you do try stuff like that, I mean, you're really just kind of opening the possibilities up for more fun and getting to experience different things. So it's actually, I mean, it's definitely to your benefit, and you're going to have more working knowledge of products in the hobby and what works and what doesn't, especially for you, so that if you do have a local guy that asks you, you can answer him honestly with a good informed opinion on something. So
Exactly. So, um,
we had a question that I wanted this, and I was being dumb and forgot to. I think this is clear back to Elio's episode. No, this was with RC Girl actually. So it was a question from Marcus Snow,
okay.
and I answered it on the page, just being a numbskull rather than just because I didn't want him to think I was ignoring him. And so he
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, I got to think of a different question for you now." I was like, "Oh, whoops." So, anyways, so what? We'll answer Marcus's question this episode, so he doesn't feel like we left him out here. So he said, "When scratch building a rig, what do you guys like to start? Body, chassis, wheels, maybe motor trans? Do you build or buy your chassis?"
Do you want to start with that one, or
No, go for it.
so I'm? When you use the word scratch building, I'm thinking somebody kind of like Wes, somebody who's making, or you know, um, Matt Kent from SBG, somebody
Mm-hmm.
who makes their bodies from scratch. To me, that's what I define a scratch builder. So it's kind of hard to answer it from that perspective.
Right.
But regardless, you almost have to kind of start with your wheelbase. Your wheelbase is everything. So if you get a body that's got, a 12-inch wheelbase, you know, ideally you don't want to be putting a 13-inch wheelbase on it because you're going to have it. The axle's either going to there's multiple ways the axles could be going. They could be going 1 inch forward, 1 inch back, half inch back and forward, because you're going to have to divvy up the distance. So realistically, you need to find a body that you want to run and then put it on the chassis and kind of see where all your where the wheelbase has to be adjusted to. That's typically how I do my building process. If I'm going to build a custom rig, I won't use the word scratch building. I guess I'll use a custom rig term, unless you want to
Yeah.
say scratch building as in the fact that you're building a rig from scratch, like as scratch meaning you're
Spare
taking
parts, I think,
spare
is
parts or
I think
rather
that's what he's going for.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely start with the body just because it makes it easier because you can always manipulate the body, whether that's dovetail, bob it, uh, hog out the wheel wells. There's a bunch of different things you could do to kind of help aid so you don't have to adjust the wheelbase so much so it's not such a drastic, change from like, oh, okay, I'm using a body that's got a 12-inch, you know, wheelbase opening and I'm got a rig that's, a 13-inch wheelbase. Um, that helps. The other thing too is I know a lot of bodies out there, especially now since crawling's becoming, definitely or scale is becoming more and more popular. I remember when I first got into this, you really had to look at the wheelbase of some of these bodies because they were so different from the base wheelbase of a rig that you're like, okay, how am I going to make this work? Because it's off by this much.
Yeah.
Because when they you got to remember when they first started making these bodies, a lot of these bodies were for like stadium, not stadium trucks, but like bashers where the tires stuck out past the body by like 4 inches. So you didn't have to worry about any kind of clearance. You just threw a body on there to make your car look like something. You
Right.
know, so um, that'd be my best advice. As far as chassis goes, I've never made my own chassis. I've always used a chassis. The closest I've gotten to making my own chassis would probably be like a truggy or something. Something where like the back half is all made out of tube. Um, that's really the closest. Otherwise, it's always been um, somewhat of a readily available chassis, whether that be axial or aftermarket frame rails or something like from VPC, some sort of a
Mm-hmm.
flat metal, you know, product. Um, but yeah, that's how I would go about building a rig.
Yeah, no, I think that's
So,
really good actually.
what about you?
Uh, I honestly, and this kind of just like it kind of confirmed it for me. I don't like building kits. I really don't. That Unimog kit, as great as it was, like honestly, I don't really get like the joy that some people talk about when they're building something. Like for me, it comes in all the finishing work and stuff like that. That's what I enjoy about it. And so for me, it's, a lot of my rigs will have two or three different lives as different vehicles, because I can't just, buy a rig for every body that we do a wrap for or some sort of decal kit for or something. So a lot of mine just kind of turn into different things as time goes on. So, like, ideally, like, I for the most part, I just like doing like what we're doing with the Wraith. You buy something, change a couple little things on it, and just kind of go from there. Drive it for a while. Then when you get bored from it, or bored with it, if you do, go nuts and make it into something crazier or whatever. Turn it into something new. I mean, that's kind of the nice thing with this. I see a lot of guys that like retire rigs and stuff, and I've never understood that because it's like, man, what a waste. I mean, give that thing another life and freshen it up and get it back out there. So I mean that's kind of what I do. I really don't like to sit there and build something out of a box like that. It's takes a lot of time that I don't really have. So I always feel rushed when I'm doing it because I need to hurry up and get it done for like photos and stuff like that, and then get those posted to the website so people can order it. And there's just always a lot involved anytime there's a different rig around here that I'm doing something with. So no, I'd prefer to just start out with an RTR or a built kit and just do whatever stuff to it that I feel like. That's really about it.
Yeah, if you're going that aspect, I mean, I have a heart. I mean, I don't know. I enjoy building, but sometimes, like I said, like you said, there is a time where having a ready to run is fun, and it's just nice to have something where you don't have to do a lot of work to. Yeah, maybe you want to add a couple items or detail it out a certain way to make it, give it your own personality, your own character. But sometimes even an RTR is not a bad platform to start some sort of a quote unquote custom build. Um, like I said, nowadays most of these bodies are tailored around vehicles that are out there. Your average crawler has a wheelbase of anywhere between 12 and 12.5 inch wheelbase. That's usually your standard that I've
Mm-hmm.
seen. There are a couple of different ones that are a little shorter, but your average is anywhere between 12 and 12.5, I want to say. So it's not that hard to find a body you want to run for that wheelbase.
There, I've noticed too. Something that you can do also is just selectively check out different link ends, because if you do, like, let's say that you just fell in love with the Proline TRX4 Jeep JK body because it's a little newer looking than the one for the Axial, and you've got the 2017 RTR, CRC Jeep, take and you can put like the longer Revo rod ends on it to lengthen the wheelbase. Just put them on one end, and that'll stretch it out enough. So I mean, there's like little tricks you can do too as far as your links and stuff goes, that you don't even necessarily have to make all new links. You can just use different rod ends and stuff and kind of fine tune your wheelbase that way too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, the other thing I would like to note about that, I've always found that it's easier to stretch the rear than it is to stretch the front,
Oh yeah.
because once you mess with the front, a lot of these companies have already spent the time and money and effort to engineer this thing to work the way it is. So if your panhard bar mounts in a certain location, then that's where it usually should stay, or at least that's where it's going to work better. Um,
Exactly, yeah.
so because once you start messing with the front, well, either then you got to start messing with where the servo sits, so your drag link is where it should be. Same thing with the pan hard. Like there's just so many more moving parts. It gets a little challenging to rearrange everything. So I usually always recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the front, it's really easy to screw up the geometry. I mean, that CR12, I had to figure out my own 3-link panhard setup on that, and dude, like, there's definitely something to be said for these guys that are the engineers at the factories trying to get it right, because there's a lot to keep in mind. You got bump steer to worry about, you got axle sway, a thing moving side to side when you compress the suspension. There's a lot of things that, all that hard work's done for you, so leave the front alone and just do the back, and that's definitely the way to go. I think I've only lengthened the front on one rig ever, and that was my OG SCX10, and it was because at the time it had a axle on, or servo on axle mount for steering, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, that's really the only time you're going to be able to adjust the front because, like you
Yeah.
said, it's on the axle, so there's not really, so your steering doesn't get messed with, because typically when your servo is on axle, it's typically a 4-link setup. So as long as you're equally adjusting all of your links, it's not going to affect the steering at all. But on a CMS or chassis mounted servo rig, um, messing with that is going to affect so much stuff. Where your where your tie rod is, or drag link, from the servo down to the axle, how much throw that has or less throw it has because you threw it off center, or you shorten the distance from where it relates to the axle. Um, and same with the panhard, because then the panhard's designed to go into a certain area. So if you push that axle forward too much, then you're losing where it goes, or back, then you're losing where it mounts stock wise. So then you have to either A, come up with an offset mount, or, like I said, it's doable, but it's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, and then too, like we were saying, that all the hard work's done for you if you just leave it alone, because I guarantee the average dude doesn't necessarily have better ideas than the engineers that build these things. So I mean, that's something to keep in mind too. You can like over fix these things to where you fixed it so much that it is broken now, like
Yeah.
that's really easy to do.
Oh yeah.
I've seen that in many cases where guys have just thrown their wallet at a rig and the thing ends up just sucking, and you go and drive like a RTR deadbolt, and aside from squishy links, like the thing's killer. So I mean, it's just funny how stuff like that works. I don't know.
Well, what I think's funny is, like, thinking back on it now, I spent more time adjusting wheelbases on my original uh, axial platform back in the day when all the rigs came with axle mounted servos. So your So if you wanted to make it more scale, you had to buy an aftermarket CMS kit, whether that be um, Hand Brothers Racing or Hand Brothers Racing is the first very, I guess what's the word, easy or user friendly setup. They gave you everything to make it work.
Hmm.
And then there was I mean, there's so many other companies. And there's
Yeah,
companies
VP
I don't even.
has a good one.
VP,
BPC.
yep, Vanquish Products has a good one. There was actually a company called Blue Monkey. I have one of their setups on one of my rigs, and it's actually funny because they came out and they had a different approach to it, which was kind of like what we're seeing now, where they took the servo, mounted it the way that it's mounted currently in a lot of ready to run
Hmm.
up in the chassis, and right next to it, they put an area for you to mount a servo winch, which I call it pioneering because this was like 6, 7 years ago, when
That's
people were,
rad.
were coming up with this stuff. And now it's like standard equipment. You know,
Exactly.
that's what some of these rigs are just coming with from the factory. So um, it's definitely interesting to see where everything went, and it just goes to show you. I know we've touched on this before. How much these a lot of these companies listen to what people are doing in the real world. Um, they're not just building something. They're like, yeah, we're building a car, we're checking box A, we're checking box B, and we're checking box C. Okay, that meets all of what we wanted to do. Let's just put it out there. Someone's going to buy it. They're actually taking the time to say, hey, look, people really want to see a servo up in the chassis. People really want to see, you know, gear options being a factory, setup. Since that's like one of the first things a lot of people do just to get better crawlability out of their rig. I mean, there's so many things like that that I think, are really great for this hobby. And that's why we're continuing to see stuff like, the evolution of now Element
Hmm.
RC. You know, they're using, which I think is one of the first companies that have the overdrive gears. Um, they come in the kit or the RTR, I guess. They come in the spare parts bag, so you can actually adjust the overdrive amount for your driving, and that's something that we haven't seen before. But it's definitely cool. It's definitely
Oh
different.
yeah.
So,
No, absolutely.
um,
There's. Let me see here. I'm looking for something on the internet really quick.
good old interweb.
Yep. Um. Shoot. Ah. Okay. There it is. Yeah, they still don't have pictures up. I was looking to see about the that new TRX4. They call it a scale and trail crawler Land Rover, and it has the word orange in their part numbers. So that is a new one that we're probably going to be seeing. We've got. Is it not on here now? Vanquish's chassis I saw on A Main earlier, and now it's not, which is kind of weird. That's weird. Yeah, A Main has the VS410 and then the Black Edition one. Earlier in the week, they had the chassis kit for the SCX10 and the SCX, or for the SCX10 2, and then basically whatever else. If you are gonna build something, we'll say custom, not from scratch from now on. I like that terminology that you came up with for that. That's a good way of putting it, custom versus a scratch build, because it's not really scratch built. So
Well, like I said, everybody uses a different term, but I
I
think of scratch building as you're literally starting from scratch. Like you're starting with a
yeah.
piece of styrene and making something. Which you know, watching. I think Wes actually has a really good. If our listeners haven't listened to some of or heard us use some of these names before, if you have and you still haven't checked out their stuff, um, Wes Made is his name on Instagram and YouTube. If you check out his YouTube channel, he just released this video a couple days ago. I already watched it. It's insane. He kind of answered, I guess, the scratch building question in his uh, way on that video. He kind of goes in depth on how do you take a scale vehicle that you want to scale down to 1/10, and how do you start? How do you make it? And it's crazy to see the amount of thought before he even starts taking out a piece of styrene and cutting it down. What goes into how are you going to make this work? Like how are you going to make it scale? And because he actually said it's not like a perfect science because if you look at our real world cars, from full size trucks to mid size trucks to SUVs to cars to small cars to even like stuff that's like they call it well I don't I don't call it a smart car, but the brand smart car, you
Mm-hmm.
know that thing's super tiny in comparison to a full size truck. But if you were to scale that down to tenth scale, you'd be doing it differently than you would a full size truck because it wouldn't be the same size as a full size truck. If that makes sense.
Right.
So it was just kind of interesting to see the process that he does. Um,
We
and he
need to
said a
get
lot
him
of it,
on here at some point too.
yeah. And he actually said that, you almost have to just kind of make everything work for what you're working with. So he actually said he starts with the body, but what dictates the body is the width of the axle. So if the width of the axle is a certain, like let's say it's 5 inches, then he wants the body to be no more wider than like 4 3/4 or 5 inches. So then that way the tire will still fall in the normal, parameters of how it would be on a real vehicle.
Right.
Obviously, if you want the tire to tuck, you're going to make the body a little wider. So, the tire goes up into the wheel wells. And then once you figure that out, then you can make the overall length, so on and so forth, figure out the wheelbase. It's, you know, goes on like that. But no, it was really nice to watch, and it was definitely mind blowing to see how some people start that process.
Pretty wild.
So yeah, a lot of the scratch building stuff, I have a lot of respect for that because it's just, like I said, it's just different, and it's like not something that I'm like, it's not something that I guess comfortable would be a good word to say. It's like, I don't know, I'm just not comfortable trying to figure out all that stuff. It's just, because then if you go through all that work and you start scaling this thing and then you start gluing stuff together and it doesn't look right, you're like, oh, there goes all that material and time.
Yep.
So kind of goes back to our fabrication talk. The same thing. There's some times I've fabbed up something, welded it all together, and then you look at it and you're just like, it looks like a piece of crap. And you're like, I just spent all that time for nothing. So,
That's funny. Yeah, it's. I don't know. Some of that stuff, like, it stresses me out and it shouldn't, but I get, like, stressed out just thinking about it. There's, like, so much to consider when you're doing all this.
yeah, which is very overwhelming to like the new person. I mean, like, I hope we don't have
Yeah.
any new listeners that like get to this point of this episode and go, oh God, there's, there's wheelbases to worry about, and there's the overall width of bodies, and,
The
you
nice thing
know,
is there is a lot of resources, though, for
oh
stuff
yeah,
like this, which that helps. I mean, because otherwise it's just you're swimming in a sea of information that you don't know is good or bad, so it's kind of tough.
oh yeah. Oh, excuse me. Freaking long days at work
Yeah,
the
I
past
know,
2
man. I
days.
was just looking. It was like 10 o'clock already. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, no, I know.
That's okay though, because I'm not worried about it. We both kind of needed our little naps before the show. It's just
Man,
funny
we're
that
like,
both of us like both happened to do that on the same day.
man, we're like, it's like a couple of old farts. Got to get your like mid-afternoon naps in.
Dude, I
I,
am an old fart. I'm so worn out from this last weekend. So like Saturday night, we had the 6 hour endurance race at Die Hard RC, and that was gnarly. And it had rained pretty much almost the entire day up until it was race time, and there was a ton of moisture in the air even though it quit raining. They were out on that AstroTurf track like blowing it with leaf blowers and stuff, and like, dude, let me tell you, like 6 hours, like just being part of a team that is on the track for 6 hours is a lot of damn work. Like, it was pretty gnarly. You only drive for 20 minutes at a time, so I drove for 6 20-minute sessions, and that's still a lot. But it was funny. I mean, even with all the moisture and stuff, we really didn't have any kind of issues. You know, we were talking about like waterproofing and whatnot. I mean, really, like the buggy body was the only thing keeping the elements out from, you know, getting to the electronics on these, and it was pretty well protected. We had a kind of a system where we would change batteries and change drivers after 20 minutes, and when we would do that, we had my little portable air compressor, and we would go and like blow out the receiver and stuff just to make sure it didn't have water in there to make it start glitching or shorting out. So we did that. But so like I think I got home at 3:30 Saturday night when that was finally done, because I live,
Wow.
yeah, I live like about an hour 15 hour and a half from the track, and so that was a hell of a drive coming back. And then we were back out the next day, Sunday, for a practice day, and just kind of like they were doing sort of like a opening weekend kind of meet and greet type thing. And so there was a lot of new faces there checking out like airplanes. And one of the guys that races, and this was kind of cool, like he doesn't even own a crawler yet. I'll even mention his name, Jeremy Kim. Super cool guy, local racer, pretty new to the scene, just bumped out of novice class here recently. And Jeremy has been out there working his butt off, moving rocks around and getting things set up for the crawler course. And it was really cool because, like, I wanted to help out with it, but, you know, I wanted to make sure, like, you know, I'd talk to him first. And I was like, hey, dude, you know, I don't want to step on your toes or anything. I know you're kind of going, you know, and doing your thing here and stuff. And so, you know, I'd like to help, but I don't want to like mess anything up that you have in mind or have already done. And he's like, no, man, I was just trying to get people excited about it and motivated so that other people will kind of, you know, that know what they're doing or whatnot would hop on board and start helping with it. And so, two of the guys from our club came out Sunday and helped move rocks and stuff, and so we got a pretty good start of a man-made course there. And I took some old bridges and ladders out that we weren't really using for our events anymore and took them there, so it was kind of cool. So we had that, and man, I was so dead by the time this last weekend was over. It was a long one, so a lot of RC, and it was really strange going from like driving a race car on the track and then like messing around on the crawler course, testing stuff out to make sure, you know, that the lines and stuff we were building were doable. So it was really weird, like bouncing back and forth between the two. But no, it was a pretty fun weekend, so that's kind of cool. It's just one more spot that we've got opened up here that we have access to that's really cool. Just, you know, more alternatives to go and drive and have fun. So it was really a neat thing. It was cool that the owners of the place were just all about it. Like, yeah, just keep it kind of natural looking and you guys kind of do whatever. So, pretty fun.
Nice. Yeah, I wish I could say I was wore out from RC. Mine's from work. I'm like, ugh. You know? sometimes, um, being in construction, you kind of go, man, did I choose the right profession? Like, there's some days you're just nonstop from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, and those days you're just sitting there going, oh, I wish I was doing something else. And then you kind of like, you know, relax or, you know, get some rest, and you're kind of like, all right, I'm good, I'm ready to go again. So no, it's just, yeah, 2 days because it's already been a short week because of the holiday. So
Yeah.
2 days into the week already, and I was like, I've been like at 100 miles an hour the whole time. So
Yeah, it's rough. I worked in construction, but it was on the office side of it, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad or anything, but dude, there's not a single thing I miss about that profession whatsoever.
yeah, it's just it's hard. You know, not to get off topic, but
No,
yeah,
it's all right.
there's, you know, it's a lot of like organizing. It's organization and corresponding with different people and different companies. That's the hardest part. And then the biggest one that comes down to it, and it's almost like this is even like the physical exhaustion. This is like mental exhaustion. Is some of the clients. some of the clients, it's like they know they want something, but they don't really know what they want, and then
Yep.
you try to talk them through it, and they go, "Yeah, that's what I want." And you're like, "Oh, okay." And then you do it, and then they go, "I was thinking it was going to be like this." And you're like, "No, that was the other option." Like, so you have to undo everything you just did, fix it all, and you know, those those are the times that it gets really like you're like, "Oh my gosh." And then there's
You.
other ones. I've had projects, almost like today. Today I was with an electrical contractor buddy of mine, put in 2 new circuits in the garage, tore out all the old conduit, put all new stuff because they're going to sheetrock the walls. So they want everything in the walls now. Um, all new lights, outlet boxes, all that stuff. And, you know, we just put our heads down and just powered through it and got everything done in 8 hours. So, um, some days they're easier than others, but I could definitely see where you're saying you don't miss it. There's day, like I said, trust me, I'd be lying to you if I said I love it every day. There's certain days I'm like, what did I get myself into?
Well, the scenario you described is very much like why I don't do custom stuff nearly as much anymore. Like, it's just strictly a case by case basis because a lot of times people don't know what they want and they don't have the language to convey to you what it is that they want. And so it's really hard to get information out of them because it's like, well, okay, so I'm just going to start drawing whatever, and then you're going to tell me if that's what you liked or not. Like, it just ends up being a horrible process, not just for me, but it's tough for the customer too, because there are so many options out there, and they have a picture of something in their head, but they don't know how to, like, convey that to me, what they are thinking about. So I'm always telling them, like, send me pictures of stuff you've seen that you think looks cool, and, that's kind of like inspiration for what you're wanting to do. And because the times where somebody's like, I don't know, just make me whatever, make me something cool, and just do whatever you want. You do that, and they're like, oh, well, that's not really what I had in mind. It's like, dude, you're killing me here. So it's
Yeah,
that's rough.
I
It's
know, I know. I've been guilty about that with you a couple times.
not really. I mean, like, you've had a pretty good plan about just about everything that you've come to me with. I think the only thing that, like, there was any real question on. Like, I think the XJ, you let me just do whatever I felt like.
Hmm.
And then, because you just wanted two chains big on the side, and we were kind of going for, like, the covering the windows look on that one. So there was that. And then the JK, you were kind of, like, you pretty much had a plan there. And so, I don't know, it was easy. Your stuff's been really easy to go back and forth and talk to about. So that's been good. So.
Well,
And plus, you're familiar with what I do too, so that helps.
I gave you full reign on the deadbolt.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. And I actually ended up using that design as one of our pre-mades and done several of those. God, there's so much stuff that I got to do. Like, I think about it and it gets like overwhelming sometimes because there's like so many new products I got to hurry up and finish drawing and get out there, and it's like, man, oh man. Just one
Really?
thing at a time. That's what I got to keep telling myself. Just breathe and do one thing at a time, and then finish that and move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah. So, well, we're getting to that point towards the end of this
Yeah.
episode. Is there anything else you would like to cover real quickly before we wrap it up?
Um, Not really. Other than next week, it looks like we'll have Team Associated's John Schultz as a guest. So I wanted to throw that out there. That should be a great episode, and I'm sure that uh, a lot of people are gonna have questions for him. So it would be kind of cool if we'll do a post saying, hey, this is who we're gonna have next week. Any questions you would like for him, that you have for him that you would like answered, let us know. Send us a message and kind of attack it that way.
Well, yeah. I actually was gonna say I got better at that. I usually first thing I do in the morning when I'm eating breakfast, I hop on and I post up, "Hey, reminder, we're recording tonight. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them." So just to try and get it, so that way we're not springing it on them too late and they're trying to ask questions. Well, we've already either A, recorded, or B, we're in the
Right.
middle of the recording and we kind of miss it. Because I know some of those happen in our earlier episodes, but
Yeah. No, it should be fine. So
But yeah, so
yeah, no,
that'll be
that's really
fun.
it on my end.
Okay. Um, well, I guess if that's it, then we'll finish this one out with we hope everybody enjoys and be safe out there in whatever you do. And remember, always have fun.
Yes, that's very important.
So,
Alrighty,
all right,
guys.
guys. Well, we will see you guys next week.
Alrighty, later, guys.